المصطفى أما بعد اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So I'll try to cover at least two diseases in this midnight session. The first one of those is something called belly, something called zulm. There's closely related terms. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما أنجاهم إذا هم يبغون في الأرض. And this is oftentimes the nature of man, بغير الحق, right, without any right. When in the Quran, multiple places talks about this very vivid imagery, alluding to it like a person who is in the middle of an ocean. And that is one of the most helpless situations that a person can be in, right? Because over there, who's gonna help you in the midst of those crashing waves? There's not a voice. There's not an ear to hear your voice. There's not a hand to lift you up. There's not, a line or there's nothing for you to sound anchor. You are literally, absolutely, utterly helpless. There's nothing. Even when I was young, other than being traumatized by Jaws, one of my great fears used to be the fact that, just finding yourself in the middle of an ocean and just drowning. In fact, when I was a very young child, I actually almost did drown. When I was, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old, we were on a dock somewhere. My dad he left me on the pier, and I saw him jump, so I said, yeah, why don't I jump? So I just jumped, and when he came back from swimming, I didn't know how to swim. He comes back and he says, where's the kids? And there was no kids on the pier. And so then he went searching for me somewhere down at the bottom of the water. And I still, I don't know, 40 years later, I can still remember what the water looked like around. And, slowly things just start closing on you. You just sort of accept the fact that you're down there. And in that situation, right, when the person has no one to call, from the inside, people call Allah. It's programmed inside people. There's black box recordings of people from the Soviet Union who have been categorically and systematically programmed into a narrative of atheism. That's all they've ever known. That's all that they've been inculcated from their entire lives, really. And when they're, those KGB forces or whatever, their air forces, when their planes are going down, you have black box recordings of they're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Where did that come from? Right? It's a reflection of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took an ahd from all of this, that alastu bi rabbikum, qalu bala shahidna. People say, I don't remember, but your heart remembers. That voice inside you that makes you look for God, that makes you look. One of my teachers, he said that if you feel thirsty, that's how you know that there's water. Right? If your heart is thirsty for Allah, it's searching for something, it's searching for God, it's searching for a higher power, that itself is a proof that that higher power must exist somewhere. And so this idea that when a person is in that situation and they call out in sincerity to Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves them and He brings them back to shore. Right? They find their footing on land and they almost want to kiss the ground that they touch, and they just break down in tears, and their heart is full of gratitude, and they know that in that moment, without a doubt, that there is a God. That yaqeen that person has the first time they step on shore, ajib if we could have that yaqeen, and ajib if we could have that type of iman. But then what happens? In short order, al-insan, he's from nisyan. They forget. That falamma anjahum, we saved them. Right? You told me that you're going to come back to on shore, and give you another lease on life, that you're going to do right. And what do? They said إِذَا هُمْ يَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. They do baghi in the world. Right? They transgress. And that's why human beings, when they're desperate, And that's why you're so ghaddar, ya ibn Adam. You know, like the person who's going to be seeing the gates of Jannah, he wants to be close, and he said, if I give you this, I'm not going to ask for anything else. He said, yeah, no, I'm not going to ask for anything. You get over there, he's like, ooh, that smells really good. Maybe I want to just go a little bit closer. You know, he says, we don't know ourselves. And Allah knows us so well. And so we're very treacherous and very deceptive and very manipulative. And that's what happens, is that when people, Allah gives it to that person, then they just turn against the very person that saved them. And the person might hear this and they're like, yeah, what a messed up person. I can't believe anyone would ever do something like that. But there's hardly a person who is listening to me right now, except if you look back in your life, you can think of at least one instance when you were in that ocean. I don't care if it was your MCAT, or you had an algebra test on Monday and you actually thought it was on Tuesday, and you show up to class and you're like, oh, there's an algebra test today. It could be anything, right? You forgot your wife's anniversary and you thought World War III is going to break loose. It could be, but there was a point where you were making dua like that, right? You could have lost your $100 when you were a student. It could have been so many different things, and you made that sincere dua, and Allah answered your dua. And in that moment, it was crystal clear that there is an Allah, and you're like, I should be really pious, and I should be really good. And then you're not. And in fact, we forget it so much that now years later, when we're reminded, they're like, yeah, I remember what that felt like. I remember when that happened. But it's so hard to change. Change is really hard. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. And this is going to happen in the akhirah, that people are going to say that, let me go back, I'll do right this time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَلَّا إِنَّهَا كَلِمَةٌ هُوَ قَائِلُهَا. I said, no way. Are you kidding me? This is just something that you're saying with your mouth. These are just words. Because every single day that you got up, I was giving you a new life. I was giving you a chance to go back and make right. I gave you 365, forget about one chance. People saying just one chance. I gave you 365 chances every single year for 40 years of your life, 50 years of your life, 60 years of your life, and you didn't make that change. What's going to magically happen that you're going to make a change now? Right, give me a break. It doesn't work like that. إِنَّهَا كَلِمَةٌ هُوَ قَائِلُهَا. And so the sad thing is that when people are, when they make this baghi and they make this transgression, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, innama baghiyukum ala anfusikum. This transgression that you're going to do, it's going to be on your head. Right? You think that you're transgressing against Allah. You think that you're transgressing against me, that it's going to somehow hurt Allah, that somehow it's going to harm Allah, somehow that is going to diminish the kingdom and the majesty and the magnificence of Allah. It absolutely makes no difference to Allah. If all of creation were to get together and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perfectly, it would not increase the majesty of Allah. And if all of creation were to get together and commit the most heinous and disobedient acts that could be conceivable by man, it would not diminish the grandeur of Allah. Right? He's Ali, he's Kabir. He's above all that. But that baghi, that transgression, that disobedience, he said, Ala anfusikum, is against yourself. Rabbi inni zalamtu nafsi. And what a terrible enemy. People think that they have haters on the outside. They're always looking around for enemies around the outside. That someone's going to steal from me. Someone's going to harm me. I need to have insurance. I need to have this. They're worried about dangers from the outside. We're the most dangerous people to ourselves. We're the ones who sabotage our own akhirah. No one else can do that. No one else can screw up your akhirah except yourself. And we do it to ourselves. We do ourselves in. It just makes no sense. The one person who should be fighting for you is you. But people don't do it. And the reason, if you look in the Arabic language, the word baghi comes from bagha, right? Like ibtagha, to seek something. And what happens is, this is why baghi occurs, is that people who do baghi or transgress are seeking some type of worldly gain. They're seeking some type of worldly pleasure, and the pursuit of that pleasure, we say in the American sort of the bedrock of our culture, the pursuit of happiness, right? In the pursuit of happiness, in the pursuit of pleasure, one of the side effects of that is that a person becomes so engrossed and so enamored and so munhamik in that pursuit that they exceed all bounds. They transgress and they go into areas where they're not supposed to go into. They transgress the rights of others. And so the root of this baghi is something called want. Right? People just want things. And when I say want, it actually goes way beyond, people, it's not just like wanting more money in the bank or wanting a better job or wanting a nicer car. Want is a lot deeper than that. People want, for example, not to work. People want pleasure. People want a life of leisure. People actually want a lot of things that aren't even good for them. Right? People want thrills. They want they want affection. They want attention. They want validation. They want the feeling of power. They want the feeling of fame. They want not even wealth itself. They want the feeling of being wealthy. This is different from wanting wealth. That's a separate disease. But they want to live in this castle in the clouds where they feel wealthy, right? And whether that entails, that's why they'll tip the bellman $50, not because they want to give the bellman $50, but all the other billionaires do that. So I want to be able to feel like that for a few days. That's why one of the reasons that many people who are rich, they like the feeling of going to 5-star or 6 stars or 7-star if you're in Dubai hotels, because they make you feel rich, even if you're only affording 1 or 2 nights. You're basically paying someone to make yourself feel special. They don't really love you, right? Or they don't really know your name. I mean, you paid $1,000 a night. They better say, "Hello, Mr. Ahmed," right? I mean, if they didn't do that, what worth your $1,000 worth? People feel like want or seek this feeling of supremacy. They seek or want the feeling of being right. And this desire or this want, this pursuit, to attain these feelings, in the pursuit of that, they mow down everyone in their way. And they mow down all the rules in this way. Then they start making these long games. There's how many people there are who they say that, they're sort of semi-interested in Islam, but they like get involved in the masjid not because they want to serve the masjid, but because they want to be on the board. Why? Because they'll never be the senator. They know they'll never be the president. That's their little fiefdom, right? How many aunties there may be that start a Quran group in their house, not necessarily because they're interested in what the Quran has to say, right? Because otherwise they would have called someone who actually knows what they're doing, but just so they go and get together, and one of them can feel like, look, I'm a sheikha, right? Let me tell you what I think this verse means, because no one's going to invite you in the masjid to give a talk, so I'll invite everyone to my house so I can give a talk, and I can feel super special. Right? This is seeking, right? And it's actually, and this is the root of, petty politics at work. This is the root of backstabbing in corporate America. This is the root of power moves that you have, with multinationals, and this is the root of even multinational and international geopolitics. These huge paradigm shifts that we've seen historiographically and in the current times. If you actually follow them to their root, you do a root cause analysis, is baghi. At the root of all of that is baghi, and it can destroy nations. Go ask the Syrians what baghi did to them. Go ask the Yemenis what baghi did to them. Go ask the Uyghur Muslims what baghi did to them. Go ask the Rohingya Muslims what baghi did to them. Go ask the children of Palestine what baghi did to them. It destroys lives. It destroys nations. It destroys civilizations. It's not a small disease of the heart. It's not something that, it's okay if we purify ourselves of the heart and this will be nice if we get rid of it. If you don't take care of it, there is fasad in the earth. لَحُدِّمَ الصَّوَامِعُ وَبِيعُ وَصَلَوَاتُ وَمَسَاجِدُ يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ. There's destruction, utter destruction in the world. The seeking of ascendancy, and this desire to want shine all on yourself. Like people sometimes, like, and you, it's really strange. Go to a dinner party. In a dinner party, there's so many diseases of the heart that actually just comes out. If you're looking, right? If you're looking, I can't tell you, like, so when you're in training, in your suluk, I would feel so dirty every time, even if I didn't say many words. After I went and just had a normal dinner party, I came back, I would just feel dirty inside. Because in the process of human interactions, many of our own deficiencies become manifest. If you're actually looking, right? If you're sensitive enough to look, you're like, I didn't need to say that. Why did I feel that? So for example, say you're sitting there and everyone's asking questions to someone else, or someone else makes the funniest jokes, or someone else has all the attention and the light is on them, and you're not feeling good about that, so now you're thinking about yourself, what I should say next to bring it towards yourself. That's a problem. Right? That's a problem. People, the idea is that we should just be like, live in the shadows. Like we're just like nothing. And this idea of trying to get shine on yourself, seeking the shine, one of the things to bear in mind is that our shine doesn't come from people's eyes in our deen. Our shine comes from a nur that exists within the heart, and from the heart it rises onto the face. And so our shine doesn't come from the outside, it comes from the inside. And anyone who seeks shine from the outside sacrifices shine from the inside. Those two can't coexist. It will bring darkness from the inside. So how do you deal with this disease? The way that you deal with this disease is that people have to learn to stay in their lane, right? To stay on your side, right? There is, and the fact of the matter is that the boundaries around you, how much space you're given, is really not that much, right? It's actually very is a very small amount of space that define the parameters or the perimeter around an individual, because there's not a lot that other people owe us. There's just not. And any expectation beyond that oftentimes will force us to step into other people's territory. And so when people, for example, don't honor us, when people don't do X, Y, and Z for us, and people feel bad about it, and they try to go and get mine, first of all, it wasn't yours to begin with, right? You're not getting yours, you're getting theirs. That's a problem. Number one, when people, quote unquote, fall short of your expectations or have shortcomings, just acknowledge the good that exists in them and just let the rest go. Right? There's no one who's perfect. No one's an angel. Neither you nor me. No one's going to be perfect. But whatever good that people proffer, take the good from them and then overlook their shortcomings. A person who has this problem or this disease of baghi is in several difficulties. The first difficulty that they fall into is that they are embroiled in what we call a vain pursuit, a trivial pursuit. What are you seeking? It's vapor. Fame is vapor. Attention is vapor. Right? Any of these things, the feeling of being wealthy, feelings are as ephemeral and as flippant and as capricious as thoughts or a bird's wings. They just fly away. And the very thing that you're trying to grab, it just leaves your hand before you can grab it. So what are you seeking? And even if you were to actually somehow grab it, the thing that you have in your hand, like I got this, the thing I was seeking, it doesn't amount to anything. Right? That's the problem. Everyone thinks that when they're pursuing something, that when I get there, it's going to be so awesome. But when you actually get there, there's nothing there. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالَهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيَّةٍ يَحْسَبُهُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَهُ. The person who disbelieves, these are people who are seeking things other than Allah. Right? That's the nature of a life of kufr. They're all about the dunya because there's no akhirah for them anyway. So they're seeking the dunya. أعمالهم, their whole life, all their actions, كَسَرَابٍ بَقِيَّةٍ, it's like a mirage in the desert. يَحْسَبُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً. People are thirsty because they're empty inside and they're looking for something. So they think that they will find water there in that mirage. حتى يحسب الظمآن ماء حتى إذا جاءه, until a person comes to it. لم يجده شيئا. There's nothing there. It's nothing there. I've shared this story before, but it's just so powerful. Like, many people know Sheikh Hussaini of the Sattar, right? Who's, now like a great celebrity in the medical world. There's probably hardly a medical student in the entire world that doesn't use pathoma now, right? When they're training for in disease and learning, it's a huge contribution. The IT department actually called him one day at the University of Chicago, and they're like, "What's going on?" He's like, "What do you mean, what's going on?" They said, "Your homepage, your landing page, has more hits than the entire University of Chicago Medical Center." Right? So that's an interesting problem to have. And this doesn't happen normally in medicine. You have like Golian, you have some people that people recognize, some names. If you're in a particular niche, you might know that these 2 or 3 people. Like if I were to name, there's so many physicians in the audience. If I were to tell them Jaffe, Fukar, Hassurgeon at MGH, they're like, who are these people? Right? They're big in my field. In HemePad, there's some of the people who wrote the blue book and defined the field, but no one else knows them, right? People live in their own little ivory towers. So for a person to have that much spread in medicine is a big deal, right? And so he had that. And I remember when my kids were in Zambia, they were like, one of our teachers, his advice was just make them scholars and just let them go in this like path of deen. And then, I was just talking to him and he's like, "So what are your kids going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, I'll try to set up a business for them or something, we'll figure it out." And he says, "But Mom, what are you going to do for your kids?" And then he said, "You know what? Forget about it. What's the big deal?" And so his words really stuck with me. What he said afterwards, he said, what everyone is running after. So being in an academic, and it's not just medicine. Like in medicine, there's like inner circles. Like, you want to be, you're not good enough just to be a doctor. You need to be an academic physician, like a doctor's doctor. And within academics, you need to be at a top 10 cancer center. And if you're in a top 10 cancer center, you want to have 200 publications under your belt. And it's just like this smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller fiefdoms. And so he said that, and he said, we're here, and there's nothing here. Like everything that everyone's racing behind and trying to get these perfect USMLE scores and best residencies and be attending at the best place and years of toil. You get there and you're sitting in that office, you're just looking at cases, writing a couple of papers. It's like there's nothing here. حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَهُ لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا. There's nothing there. Right? When you walk into your first mansion, you'll see there's nothing there. It's just a house. Right? When you drive your first BMW, you'll realize it's just a car. There's this thing, لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا. There's nothing there. So first problem is that it's vain pursuits. The next one is that anytime a person is moving towards creation, they're actually moving away from the Creator. And these people who are trying to find some type of satisfaction, they're actually digging a hole in the wrong desert. You're never going to find water. No matter how deep you dig, there's just no water there. Right? All these things that a person is seeking, the things that everyone is seeking, all of those things don't exist within the dunya, they actually exist with Allah. وَلِلَّهِ الْعَزَّةُ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَكِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ وَلَكِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. If you don't get this idea that izzah and respect and glow and light and ascendancy is for the believers and the people of Allah, then fear that you might be in the category of the munafiqeen who just don't get it. Because this is their sifat. The people who are true in their faith, they completely understand that if you want any of these things, seek it with Allah. Right? What Umar radiallahu anh, he said it beautifully. He says, "Azan Allah bil Islam." Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us izzah with what? With Islam. Not with our degrees, not with our military might. Our power is with Allah. He says, "Tawayna fil ma'siyah ghalabuna." If we become equal to them in our disobedience to Allah, then they'll come overcome us, because the source of our power is Allah. And so if we have to seek something, we have to seek Allah. If I ask someone, what are you doing in your life? How many people, right, will you ever meet in your life that will say, I'm seeking the face of Allah? Right? You'll find many people that, yeah, I'm working on my bachelor's, I'm working on my MCAT, I'm trying to get promoted to associate, I'm building my practice, I'm making a partnership for an LLC, right? I'm trying to create a merger. People will tell you so many things. How many people will you ever meet in your life who will say that I'm seeking the face of Allah? كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. Everything else is fani. Everything else is vapor, is going. It's a mirage. The only thing that's real is Allah. So where are the seekers of Allah? Where are the seekers of wilayah? Where are the seekers of closeness of Allah? Where are they? And what will you earn with the pleasure of people if it earns the displeasure of Allah? So that's the second problem with doing baghi, seeking anything other than Allah. It takes a person away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third problem with baghi, people who transgress, is that it makes a person fake. Because when you're seeking other things, and you have that, by definition, now you have an ulterior motive. And if you have an ulterior motive, that means you are not sincere. If you're not sincere towards others, then you're fake. And that's the problem. Because that's the opposite of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us, and that's the opposite of what Rasulullah taught us. He would actually take a bay'ah from the Sahaba, that you have a bay'ah, an-nushu li kulli muslimin wa muslimah, that you would be sincere to every Muslim. You would be, that basically, in other words, be real. Right? You can't be fake. You can be sincere and do baghi. Those two things don't go. You can't say that I'm being really sincere, that's why I'm conquering your land. It doesn't work. Right? It's like, I really love the Native Americans. Let's just put all of them on a reservation and take their land because I really love them. It doesn't work. You can't. Those two things just don't go together. And when you're being fake, you dispossess yourself of yourself, and that creates dissonance. And this is a recurrent theme when you see with diseases of the heart. The fourth problem with doing baghi is it puts a person in a situation when they commit zulm. And we already mentioned this in a previous talk, that it comes in hadith, al-zulmu zulumatu yawm al-qiyamah. That a person who commits oppression will face multiple you did one zulm, but in hadith it says zulumat, multiple darknesses on the day of Qiyamah. That is a time that people are just going to want some light. نورهم يسعى بين أيديهم وبأيمانهم بشراكم اليوم. There will be some people who have light. They'll know where to go. When you'll need some, if you've ever been in the dark, right? If it's pitch dark and you have your glasses somewhere, you can't even find your glasses. How are you going to find your way to Jannah across the Pul Sirat if you don't have light? Right? And if you slip on the Sirat, where are you falling to? Right? Falling into the pits of Jahannam. It's not a joke. So if you need light, right, you have to avoid zulm. And zulm is, the ulama have said, is وَضْعُ الشَّيْءِ فِي غَيْرِ مَحَلِّهِ, is to place something where it doesn't belong. And this can get very subtle. Means that if you place your anger on someone where it doesn't belong, that's zulm. Whether it was your children, or your spouse, or your husband, or your parents, or your friends, or your job, or anything. If you put something where it doesn't belong, take any emotion, take your hope, take your fear, take your excitement, take your anxiety. If you are placing it where it doesn't belong, at some level you're committing zulm. It can get very subtle. if you place your expectations where they don't belong. Sometimes we have expectations from the people around us. That can create an element of zulm. So people who are doing baghi, they undergo so many different processes that create zulm on the people around them. So how do you treat this problem of bukh? One of them is to remember that all of these things a person seeks, all of these things are temporary. When people will wake up in the hereafter, they'll realize that it was just like they tarried for a few moments in this world. Everything that we thought was so important, everything that you cried about, you understand that those tears were so much in vain. You'll be asked, قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ قَالُوا لَبِثْنَا يَوْمًا وَبَعْضَ يَوْمٍ فَاسْأَلِ الْأَعَادِينَ. How long did you stay in the dunya? Right? They didn't say, oh, I was there for 70 years and 80 years. No, that's like a day, part of a day. It's like, you know how you just go to a coffee shop one afternoon? It'll just be like that. You felt like you just went to the coffee shop and you came home. Our real home is Jannah, not here. And people place all their hopes, all their desires, all their pursuits, everything, all their eggs in this basket. It's going to get crushed. Right? The Imam was reading in the dua in the qunut that don't make the dunya mablagha ilmina, right? And don't make it our only himma and only desire and only purpose. That's something to bear in mind. Fasalil adin, ask the people who are actually counting. It's like, I wasn't really counting. Even though when you're in this world, we're like really counting. But over there, it's immaterial. The second thing to remember is the importance of huququl ibad. There's two types of rights in the deen. There's the rights of Allah and the rights of the servants of Allah. The rights of Allah between you and Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very Rahman, He's very Rahim, He can forgive. Right? But what is between human beings? People are super catty. And they're super catty in this world. Imagine what they're going to be like in the akhirah. No one's going to leave anyone's neck. Right? People sometimes they act up if you don't give them $5. Right? You think they're gonna put, they think that you think they're gonna give up their sawab and their Jannah for you in the akhirah? They will be the first people to throw you under the bus on any flippant premise that they can. And you know, the Prophet ﷺ, he asked the Sahaba, do you know who the muflis is, the one who's bankrupt? They said, then they said, the one who doesn't have a dinar or dirham. He said, no, that's not the person who's Muslim, that's not the one who's bankrupt. The one who's bankrupt is the person who's going to come on the day of Qiyamah. He will have his good deeds. He stayed in itikaf, he listened to the talks, he prayed his tarawih, he read his Quran, he made his daily dhikr, they did their wird, they donated to the masjid, they did all these nice things. And then, you know, Ahmed is going to come and he said, you backbited me on Tuesday the 14th, you know, in this 2021. He says, yeah, I'll take that ride from you, sure, no problem, right? And another person is going to come and, you know, Zayd is going to come and he said, oh, I'll take your Laylatul Qadr, right? That one that you cried, yeah, I like that one. Let me take that from him. And one by one, everything that you are banking on, they're going to rob you blind. And then you're left with nothing. And when you have nothing left, then they will start dumping their bad deeds on you. You spend your entire youth not doing zina, and then now there's zina in your book of deeds. You never did it. But there was you had to pay it off. So they dumped their zina on you, they dumped their drinking on you, they dumped their pork on you, they dumped their backbiting on you. One after another, they said, just take all the filth. The person who literally saw the gates of Jannah in front of them is now at the gates of hell. That's the muflis. So huququl ibad are not a joke. So when a person, even if a person is desiring something in the dunya, this want cannot become so inordinate or so excessive that it transgresses other people's rights. The third thing to remember is that any of these things that people who what's that called? If a person is seeking, you know, in terms of business, I don't know if there's anyone who's in business here, but whenever you make a business decision, people are always looking for a positive ROI. No one looks at a stock and say, oh man, that one only loses 1% every year. Let me go for that one. mean, it makes no sense. Everyone is looking for the biggest return on their investment that they can. So who would buy a depreciating asset? The dunya and everything that it contains is a depreciating asset. Everything. Your beauty will fade. Your house, no matter how beautiful, will fade. And if you don't know that it does that, put it as a rental and look at the IRS and see how much you can deduct every year for depreciation on your rental. Even the IRS recognizes that the dunya is a depreciating asset. Muslims haven't figured it out. Your car is a depreciating asset. Everything. So why invest in it, right? Why buy a boat that's sinking? The boat is sinking, and you're like, let me get on the boat. That makes no sense, right? Grab onto the rope of Allah, it will pull you into the heavens. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. And then the final thing is to look at the final outcome of those people who had come in the past, right? Look at the most beautiful women that live in the world. Now you don't know their name. Look at the great rulers of the world, right? They're living under the earth. Look at the great civilizations. They talk about the rise of civilizations and then the fall of civilization. Has there been any civilization that has never had a decline? Right? You talk about the great civilizations in human history, whereas the Greek civilization, the Ottomans, the Mongols, they don't even include the Chinese, right? You could, the the Roman, what they call the mighty Roman Empire. There was a handful of great civilizations. Right? Where do you see them now? قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. Where are they? They're all leveled. They're all leveled. Everyone had their heyday. You look at Ad, look at Thamud, look at Qawmi Lut, look at the people of Shu'aib, أصحاب الأيكة, حاسبا إلا على لود, صيحة واحدة فكانوا كحشيم المحتضر. Look at every single one, they're all decimated. They were just destroyed. So what is a person seeking? The next disease is actually a little bit paradoxical, and I'm not going to go into I chose a very light one because I knew that it was going to get late. Because the next ones in order was things like hubbud dunya, and these are like heavy ones, like big diseases. That's like ra'su kullu khatiya, right? That's like the major disease. So I didn't want to do something heavy. I said, let's just do something light. So one of them is disease is what we call Haya. So you're like, are you serious? Haya is a disease? I thought Haya is like good. And in fact, in hadith, it comes al-Haya la ya'ti illa bi khair. Aw kama qala, that Haya doesn't bring except for good. Right? In one of the mashayikh, they said it beautifully. They said that if Haya were to be made into a human, that human would only be doing good. Right? And he said it very poetically. So how can Haya be a disease? And how do you reconcile it with the hadith? The way that you do tadbiq is the idea is that there's two types of Haya. There's actually multiple types of Haya. There's Haya shar'i, Haya tab'i. But if you want to think of it in very simple terms, there's a good type of Haya and a bad type of Haya. The good type of Haya, it only brings good, right? And even if you go to a great degree, and every religion has a khasla, has a distinctive characteristic, and the characteristic of our deen is Haya, right? This modesty. I won't go into talking about modesty because you know how we have this whole idea of purification of the heart is removing of the diseases. There's also another science of adornment of the heart. So of making the heart and making it, they say tahdhibul akhlaq. And you look at tahdhib, it also has the letters hadha and ba. And if you interpolate it, right, it's also dhahab, right? And the idea is that to become golden. Right? For a person to become golden. So once you clear the room of your heart from these spiritual diseases and it starts to shine, then tasfiyatul qulub, then you start to polish it. So it shines, then you start to adorn it. No, like one thing is like, you buy a fixer-upper, right? DIY. You buy an investment property, you walk in, there's like mold on the walls, it needs painting, it needs new cabinets, and you start throwing out all the garbage, you rent a dumpster and you throw everything in. Once you get everything out, you're like, dang, now this place is clean. Are you done? No. You still have to furnish it, you have to paint it, you have to decorate it, you have to put sconces on the wall, you have to buy paintings. That's when the real beauty of it comes out. In the same way, the heart, once you clean all of these things off, you need to put all the beautiful things in there. You need to put tawheed in there, you need to put karam in there, you need to put ikhlas in there, you need to put sidq in there, you need to put hope in Allah in there. And that's a whole different topic. We won't have time to, obviously, in this series to go through those. But so the opposite side, you need to put haya in there. Right? That's actually a big thing. So I'm not going to talk about haya. But what is blameworthy haya? Blameworthy haya is that when a person is too shy to speak or act when it's actually indicated. And there's several scenarios where this can happen. Actually, there's 6 scenarios. The first point comes when there is a need to protect your deen, but a person feels too shy to speak up. So, for example, you go to a restaurant, they're serving your thing, you know that they're serving pork on the same, they fry pork on the, or cook pork on the same grill, right? You know that, but you should ask them to use a new pan, or separate your dish, or to make sure there's no cross-contamination, but you feel too shy, right? You feel too shy. How do I ask them? You go to the doctor's place, you have a choice to ask for a male nurse, to take care of you, or a female nurse, but you feel too shy, right? So this shyness to protect your deen, or something in your deen, this is blameworthy. It's something which is not good. Sometimes shyness comes when it comes to protecting your own family, right? So sometimes what happens is someone may say something inappropriate to a person's spouse, right? Someone may say something or do something to your children, but a person feels too shy to say something else. It's part of muruwa, right? That they are your ra'iyah, they are under your care, so they're in a manner. You need to take care of them. That's your responsibility. You have to be a man, and sometimes that means that if you have to fight, then you have to fight for what's yours. And if it means that you need to put yourself on the line, you need to protect. These are your children, your wife, the people who are under your care. That's your responsibility, and you can take that at every level of responsibility. Wherever you are in your organizations, or if you're taking care of nations, then they're all your ra'iyah. They're under your care, so you need to take care of them. Protecting the oppressed. Sometimes people are too shy to speak up about that. So you're passing by someone, right? And they do these social experiments on the internet, right? Where someone will be purposely badgering a Muslim or something, or badgering a black person, or badgering someone, and they just see how people react around them. Most people just don't care. They just walk right by. They don't want to get involved, right? They just move away. It's not okay, right? And it's actually, there's some people who will actually say, hey, stop that. You can't say that to them. You can't do that. And it's courageous. It's really I remember when Trump first came in, and he was thinking of doing that Muslim ban, right? And there was actually a lot of fear amongst a lot of Muslims that there would be another Japanese internment. And he said, we don't know about these Muslims. We don't know what they're going. You have 10 years of FBI data. You certainly know, right? What's going on with the Muslims? We've been under surveillance for 10 years, and we've actually been exonerated. So don't tell me that you don't know. But let's say that you didn't know. So they're unknown quantities. So let's put them in internment until we can figure them out. So Muslims are scared. I remember there's this one tech in my lab. She pulled me to the side, and metaphorically pulled me to the side, and she's and she tells me, she said, if just the fact that she was thinking about it, she says, if they put you in prison, she's like, I'm going with you, right? I'm going with you. This is himma, speaking up for the people who are downtrodden, and speaking up for their rights. And it's not something whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim or something. It's a person of speaking up for the oppressed, and it could be something when you're in high school. Sometimes I still remember this, and I have regret for this, because there was this one kid who was a big burly teddy bear type of guy, and there's one kid who was sort of like one of the Islamic kids, but he was ripping him apart and putting him down and stuff. And then I guess in high school I was known as one of the Islamic kids at that point. And later on, that kid came and told me, he said that I was really hurt. he wasn't hurt by that kid and what he did. He said that said that to me, and you were sitting in there and you didn't say anything. You didn't say anything. People are watching. And one time I gave like a small khutbah at one of the Jummahs, it's like tiny Jummah at Mafit. I was just speaking about the Uyghur Muslims. And Ajib, that day there was one person in the Jama'ah who happened to be a Uyghur Muslim. And he came to me after the Jama'ah and he said, thank you. Thank you for not forgetting us. Because they feel like they're forgotten by the rest of the world. Right? You have to speak. Right? Speak truth to power. You should be fourth category, don't have Haya in seeking knowledge. Sometimes people feel too scared to ask a question. La haya'a fil ilm. And I'll tell you, this was so much so that the Sahabiyat, full of Haya, they would ask the Prophet ﷺ about very delicate matters, right? About matters of menstruation and so on and so forth. And one of the Sahabiyat would actually persisted so much that it put the Prophet ﷺ, he felt sort of awkward. It's like, I don't really want to go into more details. He said, I should just explain to her. Like he had to ask his wife to explain to her because she was persistent. It's not like they didn't have Haya, but they were so concerned about the ilm because they needed to know when we start prayer. They were so worried about, they want to know when they can fast, and they want to know when they couldn't fast, to the extent that some of them would send the cloth that they would use at that time to Aisha radiallahu an to find out can we pray or not. Right? It's not something like very normal. Like anyone else would like say, that's a little bit too much, right? What they call TMI, too much information. But it wasn't too much information because they needed to figure out what to do. And it's so sad because sometimes so many people have so many questions about their deen. The cure to ignorance is asking a question. You have like so many scholars who are sitting there sometimes in the thing. You have had that question for 15 years. Ask them, right? Don't worry about if they're trying to judge you. Don't worry about, you should know that by now. Ask, figure it out, and get past it. The fifth category is enjoining good. Telling people to do good things. Right? That's not something that you should be afraid of. And the sixth category is forbidding evil. If you see something bad, sometimes you should be able to call a spade a spade. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. The reason that you're the best is not just because you're a Muslim, then live up to your name. You're supposed to, you can't just say that, I'm a Muslim, I'm an ummati, therefore I'm the best. There has to be a sifa. For every key, there are teeth. And the teeth of a Muslim is that enjoying good and they forbid evil. And this is something which is completely lost. Right? This is actually wajib. It's not even something which is like nice to do. It's a very high level of a responsibility. And there's a whole discussion that occurs, amongst, when you look at this, Hassan al-Basri, he said, if you don't, fear 3 ayahs in the Quran, then tell people these things. And why you tell people to do things, you don't do it yourself. There's a whole discussion, but without going to discussion, the idea is that still having to balance the idea that this is a responsibility. And now the new thing in this generation is like, don't judge me. Right? You're posting on your gram that you're at a club drinking alcohol and like, no, you can't judge me, Allah's the judge. Yeah, duh, right? I'm not saying I'm the judge, but you're not supposed to drink. Like, you can't, kisi ko kuch nahi bol. Right? Don't say anything to anyone. Let me live my life. You do you, bro. Right? You do you. You live your life. It's not the Muslim way of doing things. We're a community of nasiha. And if a deen is a nasiha, it's actually an atypical grammatical structure. A deen, usually the mubtada is ma'rifah and the khabar is nakira. But over here it says ad-deen and nasiha, both are ma'rifah. It's like they're one thing. And if you can't be a community of nasiha, people aren't taking nasiha. Right? It can't be a one-way street. If someone's going to give you nasiha, you have to be able to take it. If a person is giving you nasiha, don't take it personally. Think it as a blessing. If your wife corrects you, if your children correct you, if your uncles in the community correct you, just say, Alhamdulillah, there's someone out there who still shows me the right way. Because sometimes, you realize that our nose is always in our field of vision, but our mind actually filters it out, right, from the image. So that's why you don't notice your nose. And don't start looking at your nose right now. But That's we're programmed in that way, that we filter out when something's too close to you. You actually filter it out, and that's why sometimes you need a view from the outside, and that's what other people do. So where does this disease of Haya come from? It comes from the following. It comes from cowardice. Right? People have jubn. They are just cowardly. And it comes from a place of weakness, and it comes because of love of people. The three reasons. One of the reasons people don't want to say anything, they say, if I say to them, then they're not going to like me, because people don't like to be corrected. If I stick up against the bully, then he might say something against me. If I tell a person that, no, you shouldn't be doing this, it's going to take away my popularity, or so on and so on. Like, they're just worried about themselves. They don't want to ruffle any feathers, right? Yes, it's uncomfortable to say something, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't say it. Everyone wants to be in everyone's good books, but the only book that matters is the book of Allah. What about that book? So how do you deal with this? The first thing is that remember that no one respects someone who's weak-kneed. The second thing is to remember that أفضل الجهاد أن تقول كلمة الحق عند سلطان جائر أو كما قال, is that you have to be able to speak truth to power. Right? Whether that's your boss. I mean, I remember when I was an undergrad, this one brother really inspired me, mashallah. He was a solid Muslim, mashallah. So he had a boss, and she told him, he used to deliver things in pharmacy school, and she told him that, just deliver this, and she maybe charge something which wasn't right, or deliver less or something like that, just cutting corners. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. And she said, no, you're going to do it. And he said, no, I'm not. She's like, then I'm going to fire you. And he basically looked at her and told her, look, you're not the one who gives me my job. God gave me this job. If he wants to take it away, then you cannot give it to me. If he wants to give it to me, then you cannot take it away. And he walked away. He kept his job. Speak truth to power. Right? Don't be afraid. And so that's important. And on the other side, let me balance it. Don't be haram police either. Right? So it's like, because you have people, and that's a different spiritual disease, because people become self-righteous. They think, mashallah, I'm a good Muslim. I'm going to prove to everyone how good of a Muslim I is by telling how everyone else is wrong. That makes me feel better about myself. And the Prophet says, first of all, you don't correct other people on matters where there's a difference of opinion. Number two, such people, you'll find that oftentimes they don't see their own weaknesses. Yeah, okay, mashallah, she's wearing hijab now. Mashallah, he's growing out a beard, but he can't control his anger. Right? And if you touch that about them, then they blow up. Right? They don't see that they're struggling and that they had this huge struggle. And sometimes this lack of appreciation of the journey that it takes for people to come to righteousness is a seminal mistake that oftentimes parents make. The fact that we weren't always perfect either. It took a long time to we sat in with the mashayikh, and we did so many ittikafs, and it took time for us to get it through our noggin that deen is important and akhirah is important. And you think magically your 13-year-old is going to get that? They didn't sit in one particular talk. They haven't been around anyone except for our own selves, and we're not the best role models. Like, how is that going to happen? Like, they have to go through that journey as well, and you have to give them time to grow. So, and those people who go around, telling people and criticizing them and being harsh, this isn't the perfected. وَلَا كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. This is not da'wah, and this is not deen. And it's actually their own spiritual death. The people who act in that matter, and the people who look at their fault, look for the faults in other individuals. This is a spiritual disease. In Imam Ghazali, he said it beautifully. He said that if you look for I think it was him. He said, if you look for the disease, if you look at the faults in others, just know that other people have eyes too. If you see a problem in someone else, almost inevitably at some level that same problem is in you. These are people who are quick to correct, they're argumentative, they're holier than thou. So when do you correct? You correct other people not because you want to have some self-inflated ego. You do it because it's a responsibility and you fear Allah. And out of the love for the other individuals, not out of irritation, not out of nafs. And you see sometimes like this, right? So the father doesn't pray any salah the entire year. Then Ramadan comes, it's like almost like so much of deen in like even Arab and Desi culture is just cultural, right? It's what they're used to. And when the kids don't conform to that culture, it's not deen. They don't conform to that culture, then they lose it, which is also like super un-Islamic. It's something which is nafil or something which is not even that important, but then they act so un-Islamic about something. And give you like an example, like this one kid was telling me like their father, like they hardly pray the entire year. They don't go for Jamaat, nothing. But like Ramadan comes, the whole family has to be downstairs at this exact time for Taraweeh, and then we're gonna pray together. Like that's just their thing. And if you don't, you're gonna get beat. You're gonna get this. You're gonna like, the kids don't compute that. It doesn't make sense. And they're like, you're just contradicting yourself. You're not going to be able to do. The point of da'wah is to teach and to remind. And if someone already knows something, then sometimes reminding something about something they already know is only going to make them go farther away, right? So if you see a guy, he's walking with his girlfriend, you're like, brother, do you know that dating is not halal? No, dude, I don't know that. Yeah, he knows that already. You saying that, he's just like, I just need to take a different road so I don't run into this guy, like this nutcase again. It's not going to make him stop dating, right? But you make a friendship with him. Let him see you. And somehow, you have to know when to speak. You also have to know when to keep silent. I give you one story about that. There was this one very famous music artist overseas, and he met one of my teachers, like a big name, right? Like a national figure. And when he met one of my teachers, he was talking to him. He talked to him nicely. They had a very nice conversation, and that was it. He left. And then and this is something I mentioned to someone else earlier today. Sometimes when people are not ready to change, the point is not to change them. The point is just to drop the seed and give it time to grow, right? And I'll give you another story about this. One of my teachers, he had come to Texas like 10 to 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And they kept a talk for him, and they called these like taxi drivers and stuff, whoever it was, and they said, just come and listen to this guy. So he came and sat, and he was giving a talk. And this is a person who later on in his life, there was like 300,000 people in his talks. But at that point, like he wasn't a big name. He was just sitting there. He was giving a talk, and the taxi drivers are just talking to themselves. And then after they left, they said, "Sheikh, we're so sorry. They were so disrespectful. They didn't value properly." And he said, "No problem." He said, "They were talking, and I was planting. They were talking, and I was planting." And truth be told, what happened is one of his students later went back to that same town 20 years later, right? And he saw so much deen there and traditionalism and all this. He's like, what's going on there? And that same person was there, and he told him the story. Sometimes it takes a long time for a tree to grow, right? You have to be patient. You have to be patient with other individuals. So this is, I think I was saying another story, but I forgot what that one. But the idea is that you have to call with, that's the singer, right? So he said that singer later on, he came back and he said, "Sheikh, when I met you last time, how come you didn't tell me just like leave the music industry?" He said that I saw music was in your heart, so I didn't say anything. I just made dua for you. Right? This is a hikmah. So Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar doesn't mean hitting people on the head with the Quran, right? And the Sunnah and Hadith. Brother, this is a Sahih Hadith with proper tajweed, right? No, it's like that's not how it works. You have to call people with love. So this is something to just to bear in mind, that we have the integrity to speak when it's indicated and to stand up for what's right, because that's what's needed as a community, but we need to temper that with hikmah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. What's on the schedule? What's that?